Hey guys, my name is Nov and welcome to another episode of Lost Ark Made Easy. In this series we talk about each and every Guardian raid and Abyssal dungeon, and later on we will also be talking about Legion raids as well as Abyssal raids. And today we will be talking about the tier 1 Abyssal dungeon, which is called Hall of the Twisted Warlord. This is the first Rohendol Abyssal dungeon, and if you don't know the mechanics of the dungeon, then it could be rather difficult to complete. There are two boss fights, and we will start with the first one, where you need to fight two bosses at the same time. One of them is the Phantom Legion Bishop, and the other one is the Phantom Legion Rook. The first thing that you will need to know about these bosses is that you need to kill them pretty much at the same time, or with just a little bit of a delay, because if you leave one of them alive for too long, then they will start one-shotting each player in the party. Most of their attacks are pretty simple to dodge, and there is only one other mechanic that you need to be aware of, and it's when the bishop goes into the middle and the rook will go to the edge of the arena, and they will start preparing a devastating attack that will wipe your entire party if it is not successfully interrupted. 3 of the players in the party will get a purple circle around them, which will deal continuous damage to the other party members and push them away. So if you get this circle around you during the mechanic, you want to run to the edge of the arena as well. The 4th player will get a crosshair above their head, and that indicates that the rook has targeted that player. The player with the crosshair above their head needs to stand behind the bishop so that the attack of the rook hits the bishop instead of the player, and that will successfully interrupt the attack that the bishop is preparing. That would wipe the entire party. This mechanic happens a second time towards the end of the fight, but this time there will be a few towers spawning around the bishop, which you need to destroy because they can block the attack of the rook, which will result in a party wipe. But other than that, the mechanic is exactly the same. You just need to make the rook hit the bishop, and if you do that successfully and also kill them at pretty much the same time, then you can keep progressing towards the next boss. Now the second boss might give most parties a little bit of trouble because you need a lot of stagger damage, and you need to be aware of which abilities of yours deal stagger damage. And he also has a very rough party wipe mechanic that is pretty hard to understand if you haven't read a guide or haven't watched a video on it. It is highly advised that if you don't have too much stagger damage on your class, then you should bring a whirlwind grenade for the 2 stagger checks in this fight. The first stagger check can happen occasionally, and it's pretty easy to complete, but the boss will do big AoE attacks during it. Try and not use up all of your stagger skills during this check, because you will likely need it for the next mechanic. The way this mechanic works is that there is a continuous stagger check during the entire mechanic, but if you try to hit the boss without the required debuff on you, then the boss will wipe your party. The way you get the debuff is by taking one of the illusionary swords that are flying towards each player. If you take one of the swords, then every player will get the debuff for 2 seconds. And for that 2 seconds, you can deal damage to the boss, stagger damage in particular. However, if you were to pick up an illusionary sword while you have the debuff, then that will also wipe the party. And that's why each of the players needs to run away from the swords and pick them up in about a 2 or 3 seconds interval. Before going into the fight, you should talk to your party and decide who will pick up the first sword, and the second one, and the third one, and the fourth one. Usually it's best if the player with the most stagger damage picks up the first one, so that they can start hitting the boss without having to run away from the swords. If you don't seem to struggle with stagger damage, but you do struggle with the mechanic itself, then there are 2 simple ways to set up the order that you pick up the swords in. One would be that player 1 from the party goes north and picks up the first sword, player 2 goes east and picks up the second sword, and so on. So player 3 would go south and picks up the third sword, player 4 goes west and picks up the 4th sword. This is probably the easiest way to do it, but you can also do party number times 3, which is basically the Korean way of doing this. And it goes like, you take your party number and you multiply it by 3, and that number will indicate your position if you were looking at a clock. So party number 1 would get 3 o'clock, which is east. Party number 2 would get 6 o'clock, which is south. Party number 3 would get 9 o'clock. And party number 4 would get 12 o'clock, which is north. Once you have your positions and the swords start flying after you, you will need to either run clockwise or anti-clockwise, and everyone needs to do this in order to not run into each other while being chased by the swords. The first sword can be picked up as soon as the mechanic starts, and this way you can avoid a party wipe by trying to deal damage to the boss without the debuff. And as soon as everyone has the debuffs, you can even throw a whirlwind grenade at the beginning of the fight to deal massive stagger damage to the boss as soon as the stagger check begins, and after that you can start running away from the swords. If you have some ranged stagger skills, then you can also use them, if you can do it without picking up a sword. Don't worry if it takes your party a few tries to complete this mechanic. It's really not that difficult, but you need some coordination with your team to successfully complete the mechanic. This mechanic happens one more time towards the end of the fight, and it's exactly the same, so you just need to pretty much repeat the mechanic just like you did before. And that's pretty much it about the main mechanics. I will not talk about the other attacks of the boss. Most of them are pretty simple to dodge. You just need to move around and not stand in the same position for too long. So yeah, that's it. If you don't know about certain mechanics of the game, then I have a video where I cover stagger damage, weak point damage, and also countering, and I will be linking it in the top right corner. And also, if you're struggling with putting your character together, then I also have a video where I pretty much talk about everything that you can do in order to become more powerful in Lost Ark. That video should be on your screen right now, but if it's not, then you can also check the links in the top right corner. If you found this video helpful, then please do give it a like, and also don't forget to subscribe for more Lost Ark content. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.